What's up everyone, it's Henrik, your favorite crypto fool. Now we all know that air is pretty much the most essential thing that we have and that breathing it keeps us alive. But did you know that air can actually make you money as well? I recently purchased this little box and it's capable of pulling money out of thin air. No joke, no scam. Keep watching and I'll show you how. But before we get started, I need to mention two things. This little box here is actually not the one that's pulling money out of thin air. It's just the box that other box came in, because that other box is already busy pulling money out of thin air, so we need to go somewhere else to visit it in order to see it. And the other thing that I need to tell you is this.
As always, this isn't financial advice. I'm just another crypto fool on the internet, and following the methods in this video could lead to losses. In other words, do your own research and make your own decisions on what's best for you.
But let's go visit the actual magic money making box. So here it is, the actual box that I'm talking about. I currently just have it sitting out here on my upstairs balcony. Why here? Well, we'll get into that just a little bit later. But for now, as you can see, it looks a lot like a regular Wi-Fi router, and in many ways, that's kind of what it is, only slightly different. The box is a Helium Network hotspot. What on earth is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Helium Network, which is also known as the People's Network, and no, that has nothing to do with China, it's a decentralized wireless network. Come again? Okay, you know how all of the phone companies have cell towers all over the place and provide cell coverage through their networks? The Helium Network is like that, only very different in a couple of significant ways. The People's Network provides regular network coverage, not cell coverage, to the Internet of Things, which of course may include things like your toaster or your refrigerator, but also things like the Lime scooters and the Victor mousetraps. It's called the People's Network because unlike the cellular infrastructure, the main infrastructure of Helium is completely decentralized. Instead of a company owning and financing the entire infrastructure, the People's Network is powered by hotspots that are all owned by individual, well, people. These hotspots all connect to each other, and since they are able to reach up to 200 times further than conventional Wi-Fi hotspots, they form a massive coverage grid. In only 3 years, the network has spread like wildfire, and now the coverage map pretty much looks like those of traditional cell phone companies. Take a look here. But what does all this have to do with pulling money out of thin air? Well, in order to get individual people to finance this whole network infrastructure, Helium came up with a plan to pay hotspot owners for the traffic that goes through their hotspots. This was a stroke of genius because so far almost 750,000 people all around the world have purchased and launched hotspots just like the one I have here. So how does all this work? Well, here's how it all fits together. When your hotspot is first connected, it gets added to the Helium network. There's a small setup procedure, but it's among the easiest of setups that I've ever done. Once part of the network, the hotspot starts communicating with other hotspots around you, and it becomes part of the overall grid. As traffic flows on the grid, you get paid any amount for your hotspot's role in all of these communications. You may have heard of crypto mining before. Typically, that requires pretty intense hardware as the tokens are mined under what's called proof of work. Essentially, this means that computers run non-stop to solve a complicated math problem. And whenever they find a solution to this math problem, you get a crypto token. That is, of course, the very abridged version, but it's close enough for now. There is also what's called proof of stake, where you're paid to validate blockchain transactions and paid based on how many crypto tokens you have staked, and that's what Ethereum is moving to later this year, or at least in theory they are. But Helium tokens are mined under a third and completely different paradigm known as proof of coverage. Instead of being paid for computational power, like proof of work, or making a supply of tokens available, like in proof of stake, you get paid to make network coverage available. That sounds super simple. Why, yes. And that's because it is. All you need is a hotspot, some electricity, and an internet connection. And of course, a couple minutes to configure the box, but That's no big deal. After you do that, you're on your way to earning, well, I'll show you in just a little bit what the earnings actually look like. But first, you need to know that Helium hotspots generally cost anywhere from $500 to around $1,000. I purchased a SenseCap M1 for just over $500, but the biggest issue with these Helium hotspots isn't actually the price, but rather their current availability. As with so many other things right now, they're in huge demand and they have a very low supply, so depending on which hotspot you're going for, you could be waiting up to 8 months for delivery. Luckily, there are places that have the M1 in stock, so I got mine within just a few days after ordering it. You also need to know that location is everything for Helium hotspots. The People's Network has divided the entire world into a system of hexagons. These hexagons come in sizes from 0, which is ginormous, to 12, which is tiny. Finding a good location for your hotspot is about finding hexagons that have just the right amount of hotspots around them and in them, or not in them, already. And there's a bit of both science and black magic involved with finding a great place for a hotspot. If you're wondering what my location here is like, the answer is, well, it depends. If we look out from my balcony, we can see that I have a huge line of sight to a lot of different places, which is great. But obviously that line of sight only extends to a little under 180 degrees, then buildings start to block the signal. So I'm pretty much losing half of the potential. We can also look at the hexagon map where we can see other hotspots around me. I ran a simulation of my hotspot on Hotspotty.net, and as you can see, I'm in the top 1% on their proof of coverage score, and also in the top 1% in terms of being able to see other hotspots. As you can see, my little box can apparently see more than 10,000 other hotspots. Wow, that sounds pretty darn good. But remember when I said that equal parts of science and black magic were needed? I've actually changed the reporting location of my hotspot just slightly. The yellow dot that you see here is my house, but my hotspot is actually reporting that it's located over here. I did this because there already was another hotspot inside of my local tiny hexagon, and by moving the hotspot just a tiny bit, I was able to end up with a hexagon all to myself, and that is an ideal scenario in the People's Network world. So with a near perfect score, how much is my little Helium hotspot actually pulling in? Da, 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 da! Well, not as much as you would think. If we look at my official data, we can see that in the last month, which is actually only about 21 days because I just installed this box earlier this month, but in the last 21 days, my total earnings are 0.99 Helium HNT tokens. Now, right now, one Helium token is worth $15.83, which means that in 21 days, I've earned just under $16. Those are terrible numbers. You suck. You told us that we were going to be earning all kinds of money with these things. What's going on? Well, thank you for that. I always love a good comment. And by the way, feel free to leave me 1 or 2 or more comments down below. But let's go back and look at the simulation scores. You see how it says height right here? That's the height your box sits at. Or, more accurately, the height your antenna sits at. 11 meters is around 36 feet, and the railing on my balcony is definitely not 36 feet off the ground. So why did I put in 11 meters for the simulation? Well, because I have plans to get the box up on the roof and getting a slightly different antenna up there as well. If I can get it up high enough, as you can see here, my line of sight expands dramatically, and hopefully this will be the magic piece that sends the earnings up to a much more exciting level. So how much am I actually hoping to make from this hotspot? Well, since all the details about all the hotspots on the entire People's Network are publicly available, I took a look at the hotspots that are around me. Now, this guy down here seems to be one of the ones doing the best. His hotspot made around 5 3/4 Helium Network tokens in the last 30 days, which is around $91. What's interesting about this guy is that his location is at a much lower elevation than mine. He's close to a lot of other houses, but a big part of his line of sight is being blocked by the hill that I sit on top of. If we take a look at his equipment info, we can also see that he has a Bobcat hotspot, which is another extremely popular hotspot, but we can also see that he has a slightly upgraded antenna since the Bobcat 300 comes standard with a 4 dBi antenna, and oddly, he or she or they reported their altitude to be 0, which is almost certainly incorrect. So if this guy can pull in $91 a month, I'm hoping I'll be able to pull in somewhat more than that once I get my hotspot up on the roof with an upgraded antenna as well. So now you know everything there is to know about the magic box that pulls money out of the thin air. And I will most definitely be sharing a new video with the hopefully improved results of my box once I get it up on the roof. Be sure to stay subscribed, you don't want to miss that. If you found this video interesting, you also do not want to miss my video about crypto node projects and why you most likely will not get rich from one of those. You can watch that video right here, right now. Or you can just watch another completely random video from my collection of crypto videos right here. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and may the crypto odds be ever in your favor. Bye bye.